Keir Starmer is all over the place at the moment. He has reached the stage of his premiership where the gatekeeper has become the story. It's a clumsy round of number 10 briefings meant to project steel instead of advertised weakness. It's the line that the Prime Minister would face down any leadership move implicitly conceded that there was something to face down. Kemi Badenoch pounced at PMQs and actually did quite well for the first time in over a year, asking whether he had confidence in his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Starmer praised Wes Streeting, condemned briefing against Cabinet colleagues, and swerved the direct confidence formula. Only later did number 10 insist he did back McSweeney. In politics, that choreography reads as hesitation followed by tidy up. It makes the centre look buffeted by events rather than in charge of them. Wes Streeting then executed the textbook counter. He denied plotting, branded the briefing self-defeating, and refused to add to a toxic culture. Instead of smoking out a rival, number 10 inadvertently promoted one. Reports now have cabinet-level voices whispering that McSweeney cannot survive, with Labour Chair Anna Turley announcing an inquiry into leaks. When your antagonist looks loyal and calm, while your allies brief against shadows, the optics right themselves. The public climate is unforgiving. Fresh YouGov tracking and same-day reporting suggest around half of voters think Starmer should stand down, with only a minority urging him to stay. Even if such snapshots are volatile, they sting at the precise moment he needs discipline for a hard budget. A leader can ride out Westminster psychodrama. If the country is listening, it gets harder when the country is changing the channel. There's a pattern here that Westminster has seen before. After 2017, Theresa May removed Nick Timothy, not because he alone cost her authority, but because his continued presence made renewal impossible. The sacrifice bought time, but not restoration. Boris Johnson's ejection of Dominic Cummings created similar problems. The lightning rod went, the storm did not. In both cases, the advisory melodrama had become a proxy for deeper doubts about direction and grip. You can change the courtier, or even the courier, and still be trapped in court politics. Starmer's own personal charm is part of the problem. This technocratic thing, having already burned through senior comms and chiefs, he confronts a painful binary. Fire McSweeney and you look reactive. Keep him and you invite weeks of attrition. The leak inquiry buys a headline but not a reprieve. Westminster always treats process rows as x-rays. They reveal whether the bones will hold. So reconstructing the chain, number 10 tried to signal resolve. That inadvertently confirmed that there was something to resolve. And Badenoch forced the confidence question. Starmer's answer avoided the formula. Number 10 later supplied it, and the gap between the two became the story. Streeting used his broadcast round to appear adult and emerge larger than when the day began. At that point, the conversation always moves from who briefed whom to whether the Prime Minister has commanded the events or whether the events are in command of him. The FT's Westminster readout captures the wider shift. Quiet conversations about a post-Starmer future have been running for months across rival factions that rarely agree on anything except the possibility of change. Name lists are fluid, motives mixed, but the psychological line has been crossed. People have moved from if to how. That doesn't make a coup inevitable. Labour is historically poor at regicide. It does mean every setback will now be read through succession. What then is the least bad path? One option is clean amputation. Remove McSweeney quickly, pair the move with a broader operational reset, and install a heavyweight political secretary with real PLP authority to lock the backbenches into decision-making. That only works if it's framed as strategic, not scapegoating, and if policy immediately reclaims the bulletins. Think 72 hours that move the story from personnel to delivery. Without that pivot, you simply feed the idea that number 10 is a machine for eating its own. Another option is to keep McSweeney and harden the centre. Announce bright line rules on briefing, impose consequences, and produce tangible wins fast. That is the hardest route because momentum is against you and because the very act of digging in invites more leaks. If the next fortnight is full of anonymous colour, about who said what to whom, the budget lands in a fog of personality. That is how governments lose definition. The third path is hybrid. Park the personnel question while making visible concessions to reality. Acknowledge the communications mishandling in your own voice. Bring in a figure with PLP reach alongside McSweeney now, with a clear portfolio for party management. Give Streeting 2 crisp wins on the NHS within 30 days, not to buy him off, but to stop him becoming a free, floating symbol of competence. Open up the grid so we hear policy in English, not positioning in riddles. The public will forgive almost anything if they can see what is being built and when. The immediate language should be simple. One sentence on principle. I do not tolerate briefing against colleagues. Stops today. One concession to fact. We mishandled communications this week and that is on me. One operational act. Either a change of chief or a named senior political secretary who can walk into any tea room and lower the temperature. One policy drumbeat around the budget that explains the tax pain as finite, lists measurable delivery targets and sets public milestones. The point is less penance than proof of grip. There is also the matter of truth in advertising. Voters do not punish leaders for difficulty, they punish leaders for opacity. If the fiscal position is worse than expected, say so. If unemployment is higher and choices are grim, say so. Define the trade-offs. The alternative is to let opponents tell your story while your team fights over authorship. That is how a row that began with whispers becomes a referendum on character. In strict arithmetic, Starmer still has assets. Labour does not do quick leadership executions. The formal threshold for a challenge is high and rival camps are split. But politics is not only maths. It is atmosphere. When the courtier becomes the plot, the monarch is already in danger. If McSweeney goes, it must be the doorway to a different number 10, not a media sacrifice to buy a fortnight. If he stays, there must be immediate visible proof of command that drowns out the psychodrama. Right now, the polls, the PLP whispers, and the week's chronology point the same way. Change the strategist and reset the operation so policy retakes the stage, or watch the Cummings and Timothy cautionary tales replay on a tighter clock. We've seen it all before.